Okay guys, so once you finish creating your players, the next thing that you want to work on is updating the player code, because now we have a couple things that we want to be able to do. The first thing is we want to make sure that when we start our game, we always start with our base player, which is a player that we're always going to start with. And then we want to make sure that we are able to swap and change into the other players that we have whenever we want. So the first thing that we're going to do is inside of our player sprite, we want to make sure that we're looking for the block of code we just finished adding, and we're going to update this to make sure that our base player remains the same. To do this, we're going to go inside of our looks tab, and we're going to add a switch costume to, and we're going to add this in between the go to front layer and the set size. We're going to change this to the first costume that we have for our original player. And then we're going to create the new code that's going to allow us to swap into our other players. So to start off, we're going to go inside of our yellow events tab, and we're going to add another when I receive green flag. After that, we're going to go into control and add a forever and then an if then inside of it. So it's going to be looking at when something is happening, and specifically when we go into sensing, we're going to add a key space pressed. We're not going to use a space key because we're going to be using that for our firing. So we're going to change this to any key that we want. So for right now, I'm just going to change it to my C key, C for costume change, since that makes the most sense. And it's also very close to the other keys that we're going to be using. So it makes it easier for me to swap out my player. So inside of the if then, we actually want to add a wait 1 second, and we're going to change this to 0.1. This is going to allow us to slow down the process of us swapping into the other character, because when we click on the C, if we are holding it for too long, it'll continue changing it too fast. So this just allows it to take a second before it swaps to the next one. And then we're going to go into looks, and we're going to add a next costume right underneath that. So the problem, like I said, is because we don't have our intro screen and we don't have a broadcast happening, this code is not going to work. So to allow it to work for right now for testing, I'm just going to go ahead and disconnect my code by pulling it down. I'm going to go inside the events tab, and I'm going to add when green flag click to both of them, and then I'm going to click on my green flag to start. So I'm still able to move my player left and right, and now when I click on my C, I'm able to now swap into my other player. Press C again, I'm able to swap out to my other players, and I've been able to circle back to my original character. Remember that for your other players, to center them as close as possible, because if you move them, they also move a little bit in their positioning, because it's taking into consideration the spot that we told it to spawn at, and it's also taking into consideration where in this space inside of the costume is our player also located. So making sure that those things are set up, you guys can go ahead and test out your game. Once you've done testing it out, remember to disconnect it from the when I receive green flag, and to connect it back into its original code to make sure it's all ready, so that when we create our intro screen, everything should be working as it's intended to.